The iQOO 7 is a brilliant frigging phone, but there are things which might just make it the most terrible phone you have ever used to. So yeah, that also means that we are still not getting a perfect frigging phone. Hey everyone, Mukul here. So as always, a friend bought the 12GB variant of the iQOO 7 recently, and before he could use it, I snatched it from him and I made this review. So yeah, thank you dear friend. Now there are a ton of both good and bad things I can say about the phone, and as the video progresses I'd share them simultaneously because being linear sometimes sucks. So what I really seriously loved was the damn good packaging the phone had. I mean, in its every nook and corner, the packaging screamed the word premium in all my ears. Precisely to be 2 years. I like the yellow accents on the box, and the inner packaging was pretty sweet too. Ooh, we got a badass monster over here. They also put a special feedback print in the box, which is something I definitely have for them in this video. The charging brick is huge and bigger than the 30-watt charger I use for my OnePlus 8, obviously, because this is 66 watt. The case was included and is pretty nice. I mean, it's just a case, so I rest the case. And the phone already had a protective screen cover on it. As I held the phone for the first time, I could really feel its size. Being a 196 gram phone, it doesn't quite feel as heavy, but the size definitely feels on the larger side. The weight distribution felt fine though. I mean, it's just a phone, so even if it was off a bit, it wouldn't have bothered me much. The design on the edges felt quite refreshing. I like the top indent, maybe because it's something new to me. The phone also felt quite thick, but it just managed to land before the point where it could have felt absurdly thick. The volume rocker keys felt solid, but the power key felt slightly rattly. On the front there is a notch at the corner which does feel a bit distracting, especially if you extend the size of a video playback to full screen. The back has this nice mattish finish which has become a trend now. I really like the subtle back design which can literally get lost in darkness, and it's quite dark. I also noticed that even though it does get some smudges, it's really easy to wipe them off. The phone has quite a thin camera bump on it considering how thick they have become these days. I think some of the camera layout thickness has been cleverly hidden inside the phone's body too, and hence it makes it a little more thickened than the typical phones we see these days. The first boot setup felt quite like vanilla Android, and there was also a tutorial which shared the bad charging habits most of us have. I am thinking they did this so that people kinda learn how to manage the battery and the super fast charging habits on this phone. But during the first boot up, I had to accept 4 frigging different disclaimers. I mean, this really can't get any more irritating than this, and it also kind of makes me dubious about the things they might make us accept, otherwise you can't really finish setting up the phone. But you know what was even more frustrating? Every single app from iQOO on the phone showed me some sort of disclaimer again and again till I had gone through most of its apps. I mean, really? What the hell are you guys trying to do here? I mean, I just hope I haven't given my house rights to you, which might have been hidden deep inside one of these disclaimers. iQOO also tried to enforce many recommended services, which I was not sure at this stage, but thankfully I was able to skip these at least. You would find a heck lot of bloatware on the phone, and apart from just a few, you can't really uninstall the many others which are by iQOO itself. The most frustrating of them was the V app frigging store. I mean, even if you install an app from Play Store, it will show it's not iQOO certified for some reason. Whenever you uninstall an app from the Play Store, it will show that you have uninstalled it and then forcefully gives a suggestion of an app you might want to install. No thanks. Yes, you can definitely turn off its notification, but you can't disable or uninstall it, so it will always be running there. This is really one of the saddest things about the phone. There are some debloat guides on YouTube, but I suspect not a lot of users will bother to even go through them. So yeah, that's kind of a letdown. The haptic feedback on the phone was pretty decent, and I can say it definitely felt way above average. And I say felt because of the haptic properties. Haptic, get it? The display overall is pretty bright, but it does look a bit desaturated, and the color calibration being more towards the blues, which can be fixed to some extent in the display settings though. But the overall quality of the display was good and almost neck to neck against my OnePlus 8. But maybe the OnePlus 8 display was slightly sharper. Most of you won't care about that anyway. You can adjust the overall color shift and tone of the display, and also enable the low brightness flicker feature, which was only visible to a camera, which was recording at 1/50th of a second, but my eye couldn't really see it. Having a 120Hz display with a Snapdragon 870 chip on the phone means that you can probably enjoy a lot of games at higher refresh rates, and if you're someone who doesn't play games, then have fun with scrolling your Instagram feed. The signal strength of the phone turned out to be better than my OnePlus 8 when I tested the same SIM separately on both the phones. Both the face unlock and fingerprint unlock are blazing fast, but iQOO again throws more freaking disclaimers and forces you to accept them if you want to use these essential security features. So yeah, by this point I was totally frustrated, but just because of the fact that I only had to accept them once, so I accepted them and moved on. What I absolutely loved about the phone was that the Gboard was its default keyboard, so that's one step less to set up the phone. There's a global search feature set by default when you swipe down on the home screen. It has these random suggestions for other apps and such other crap, but I was able to turn them off for a cleaner look if I decide to use this feature. There's also a Joby Home feature which will always be present on the top right corner of your notification panel. So yeah, you can't really get rid of it. It works like Google Assistant, but it isn't Google Assistant, so I'm not sure if people who are into Google would ever want to be into Joby too and cheat on each other. The speaker sounds loud enough but does sound a bit hollow. Also, the distribution isn't quite balanced and the right side speaker would sound way louder than the left side. The insane 66 watt charger charges the phone pretty freaking fast. The first 15% of charging was done in just 2 minutes and the next 20% in just 6 minutes more. The charging only gets a bit slow after the 50% mark, but the total charging time was around 40 minutes, which is pretty impressive. But the overall battery performance at 120Hz wasn't much impressive. I was able to churn just about 2 hours of screen on time with the 50% of battery usage, and it included all these benchmarks I took, the game I played, the camera test I did. But this can also mean that the phone might not be able to ever cross 5 hours or let's say 6 hours of screen on time, especially if you also use the phone at 120Hz constantly like me, because obviously we paid for it, so we are gonna use it. But you can also put it on the smart feature too, which enables and disables the 120Hz based on the applications or the way you use the phone. So that just might give you a bit more battery backup, but if you are someone who carries the phone charger with you all the time, then you shouldn't really worry about the battery performance. What really impressed me with the phone was its amazing camera performance. Now the camera bump is quite thin on this phone as compared to the recent trends we are seeing, but boy are the pictures taken good or what. The pictures in daytime tend to come a bit too oversaturated, but I have no complaints with the kind of details it captures. The primary sensor is pretty darn good on this. The ultra-wide sensor being typical to what the trend is, well, it isn't as impressive as the primary sensor for capturing details. But yeah, it's there and it is definitely ultra-wide, so I won't mind using it every now and then. The 2x zoom shot is also quite good and does capture nice details. It does also manages to lit up areas where the primary sensor kind of fails, so the camera algorithm is doing a decent job on the iQOO. Human subjects like me tend to get captured with enough details too, with a bit of acceptable sharpening on the picture. The phone can also take really darn nice macro shots when you turn on the macro mode. The focus just snaps instantly when you move the phone closer to your subject in the macro mode. And I think it felt easier to work with than the Redmi Note 10 Pro macro mode, which I reviewed recently. And the front camera is quite impressive too when it comes to capturing details, and the portrait does a fine job too. You can also adjust the aperture manually as you are taking a portrait shot, which is of course a nice feature to have. The videos from the rear camera have 2 different stabilization mode, and if you push for more stability, the video would have more and more crop on it. Well, overall they have nice details, and yeah, don't really record videos without the standard stabilization at least. But do note that if you try to use the ultra stabilization mode, then it just records at 1080p and not 4K. The front also captures nice details and records at 1080p. What's bad here is the stabilization and the mic quality, which sounds really tiny. Tiny as in I sound like a tin man here. And this is how the video quality is from the front camera. Yeah, it's quite humid and I'm quite sweaty and I'm not speaking very loud. The slow-mo video also captures slow-mo with great details on it as it's a 1080p video. So yeah, you can say so far I really love the overall camera performance. And what again impressed me with the primary rear camera on the iQOO 7 was its low light performance. Well, it does take its sweet time to process a picture in low lit scenarios, but I really don't mind that, seeing the quality of pictures it produces by the end. The ultra-wide sensor again typically behaves poorly in low lit scenarios, but turn that night mode on and you get a far superior picture. I mean, unless you zoom in, that picture looks great. And capturing human subjects with masks on, hehe. The sensor does perform nicely, but if you try the portrait mode in low lit scenarios, then you would definitely be disappointed with the details. The front camera manages to capture decent details and the portrait gets a little soft but works nonetheless. The front camera also works with the night mode, but what was truly weird was that even after I turned off its beauty mode completely, which made me look super weird in the first place, well, even after shutting it off, the iQOO camera app still tries its best to beautify the face. I mean, if you want to call that beautification. I'm personally not a fan of this, but if you're someone who digs fake beauty, you wouldn't mind this and might even use the beauty mode to its max parameter, as really who is really real anymore, right? The videos at night performed better than I expected, even when they were a bit noisy, but the standard stabilization worked wonders and the ultra stabilization would hardly record anything, so avoid that at all cost. The ultra wide stabilization works, but there are these jiggly effects all over the video, so I wouldn't recommend that. The front video behaves okay. The details are there on the video, but it really fails to capture enough light to make the face lit, like how it horrendously did with the front camera with the night mode. Well, let's talk about the best thing which is on the phone, and it's the Snapdragon 870 chip and its performance. I played Call of Duty on the phone for about half an hour and the back really didn't heat up much, so you kind of feel it, but it shouldn't be alarming. The game also ran at max settings and hence justifying the chip the phone has. Whenever you run a game, you would notice these tiny pop-ups which will appear on the screen as soon as you run a game, which is actually a sign of the phone enabling Game Boost, which will optimize the phone for gaming. I mean, that's why it's called Game Boost. I also ran Geekbench a few times, each after one another, and the score stayed pretty consistent, proving the phone manages the thermals well. The RAM management was pretty solid thanks to the 12GB plus 3GB extendable RAM feature the phone has, and no matter how many apps I opened up, I was not able to consume more than 7GB of memory, and even after opening 20 plus apps, Call of Duty stayed in the background and opened instantly, which was darn impressive. Now I wanted to cover a lot of features the FunTouch OS has to offer, but that would have made the video super freaking long. So I will just list them on the screen, but let me share the good and the bad of it in a summary anyway. The theme store has themes and some really crappy ads which might not be suitable for many users and age groups. I mean, iQOO really needs to fix this unless they really want to be a reputable brand out there. The default iQOO browser is the true planet of the ads. I have never seen or used a browser with so much junk in it. Just remove it from your home screen so that you don't even accidentally tap on it. VApp, which is iQOO's own app store, is horribly intrusive. Unless you turn off the notifications completely and install an app from anywhere on the phone, it will just pop the notification up of the app you just uninstalled with an unwanted recommendation. Oh God, spare me. The always on display can be turned on permanently, which is good and is the true definition of what always on display means. And it can also be set in a way so that if you just move the phone a little, it will just lit up. You can literally set up animation type for almost everything here, including fingerprint, face unlock and charging. But oddly, split screen wasn't supported by most of the iQOO apps themselves, making the scenario look a bit funny. You can also customize the sound effects as per your age group, because as you grow older, you turn deafer and deafer. And this is a feature which I've only seen in Samsung phones before. The shake to flashlight feature didn't work quite well, but if I customize the volume down key to activate it, then it kind of works perfectly. So you might have understood by now that if you wanted to save some bucks over the OnePlus 9R and still get a darn good hardware on the phone, some of the caveats can really turn off some of you, or many of you, I don't know. And by that I mean the extremely intrusive habit of the many stock iQOO apps and the many disclaimers the phone asks for a really long time. I mean, all of this really pushes my mind in two different directions. The phone has extremely good value and a really good set of hardware inclusive of the camera on it too, but spending just a little shy of owning a OnePlus phone with the same processor, the same chip on it, well, it does bring a lot of software crap which no one would ever want or desire on their phone. But then again, what's truly sad about the OnePlus phones now, that even they might totally ditch the Oxygen OS, and soon in the future we might just get Color OS on the phones. But if you're a user who's least bothered about all these factors and who is someone who just needs a damn good phone with damn good features on it and which can also give you a maximum value for the money you are going to put on the phone, then yeah, the iQOO 7 is really a great deal. I mean, the performance is great, the cameras are top notch for this price segment, and the huge freaking screen, which is as good as many flagships out there in the same price bracket. The fast charging and the other software feature, the mini software features the FunTouch OS has. Well, yeah, all of this really sounds really good and makes the phone a really value for money device. Damn, I really invested a lot of time in scripting this review, so I do hope I earned a sub here. That is if you discovered this video in the first place. Otherwise, no discovery, no sub. You can also hop onto a Discord server for more chit chats on relevant topic. So stay safe humans, that's all for today. MewBot out! Is this the 7th time I'm saying out today? No, definitely not.